The stars disappeared first. Not gradually, but all at once, as if someone had thrown a blanket over the night sky. People across Earth looked up from their evening routines and saw darkness where constellations should have been. Then the ships began to glow. 12,000 warships materialized in perfect geometric formation around Earth. Each vessel was massive, some stretching over 5 kilometers in length. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. The smallest of these ships dwarfed humanity's largest space station. The biggest ones could house entire cities. Admiral Haiyan Wu was in his office at the United Earth Defense Headquarters when every alarm in the building went off at once. He ran to the command center, where dozens of officers stared at screens filled with red warnings. The tactical display showed Earth completely surrounded. His assistant's hands shook as she handed him the preliminary count. 12,000 confirmed hostiles, sir. They appeared simultaneously across all orbital zones. We've never seen technology like this. Haiyan Wu felt his stomach drop. Humanity had 300 military spacecraft. Most were patrol vessels and light frigates. Against this armada, they were gnats facing a hurricane. He reached for the emergency communication line to wake up every world leader. The alien broadcast came before he could make the call. Every screen on Earth, from military displays to smartphones to ancient television sets, showed the same image. A creature stood before them, roughly humanoid but clearly not human. Its skin had a crystalline quality, reflecting purple and blue hues. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face stared out with cold intelligence. When it spoke, translation software built into the broadcast made its words clear in every human language. I am Supreme Commander Thelvin of the Kovrian Empire. Your world is now property of the Empire. You have 72 hours to surrender all military forces, dismantle all weapons, and prepare for integration into our civilization. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your planet. We have conquered 47 worlds. All have submitted. You will be no different. The broadcast ended. For several seconds, complete silence filled the command center. Then chaos erupted as everyone started talking at once. Haiyan Wu raised his hand for quiet. His mind was already racing through options, though none of them looked promising. President Minna arrived at the emergency bunker within 20 minutes. The United Earth Defense Council assembled in record time, their faces appearing on screens from secure locations around the world. Captain G1 attended via video link from her carrier stationed near Mars. She commanded the 5th Space Wing, humanity's most experienced combat unit. Our fleet can't win this fight, G1 said bluntly. She never wasted words. Even if every shot we fired destroyed an enemy ship, which it won't, they'd still have 11,700 ships left. The math doesn't work. Dr. Tae Soong, Earth's leading weapons researcher, adjusted his glasses nervously. I have projects in development. Quantum disruptors, spatial mines, directed energy weapons. But they're all theoretical. We'd need months of testing, maybe years. We have 3 days, President Minna said quietly. She looked at each face on the screens. 72 hours to decide the fate of our species. Do we fight, or do we surrender? Colonel Dae Haiyan, commander of Earth's ground forces, slammed his fist on the table. We fight. We always fight. That's what humans do. Against impossible odds? Someone asked. Especially against impossible odds, Dae Haiyan replied. Read a history book. Humanity's best moments came when we refused to accept defeat. When we stood at Thermopylae, when we stormed the beaches, when we reached for the stars despite every setback. We don't surrender. Admiral Haiyan Wu pulled up files on his tablet. I've been reviewing what little data we have on the Kovrian Empire. They've conquered 47 worlds, all through overwhelming force. Their strategy is simple: show massive power, demand surrender, occupy peacefully, or destroy completely. It's worked for them for over 200 years. So what do we do differently? Min Ah asked. We don't follow their script, Haiyan Wu said. They expect either immediate surrender or a conventional military response. We give them neither. We make this messy, unpredictable, and expensive. We turn this into the kind of fight they've never experienced. G1 leaned forward on her screen. You're talking about guerrilla warfare. In space and on the ground. Hit and run. Make them bleed for every inch. Can we win that way? Min Ah asked. No, Haiyan Wu admitted. But we can make winning cost them more than they're willing to pay. We can make an example of Earth that terrifies their entire empire. We can show every conquered species that resistance is possible. The council debated for hours. Some argued for negotiation, for trying to buy time or seek mercy. Others wanted an immediate military strike to show defiance. Dr. Tae-sung proposed evacuating cities and moving critical infrastructure underground. Every option seemed to lead to the same conclusion: massive casualties and probable extinction. Finally, President Min Ah called for a vote. The question was simple: surrender or fight? The vote was unanimous. Humanity would fight. Min Ah addressed the world that evening. 8 billion people watched as she stood at a podium, the seal of United Earth behind her. She spoke calmly, without pretense or false hope. Today, we were given an ultimatum by a force that greatly exceeds our military capabilities. They demand our surrender, our weapons, and our freedom. They expect compliance. They will not receive it. She paused, letting the words sink in. I won't lie to you. The coming days will test us like never before. Many of us will not survive. Our cities may burn. Our fleets may fall. But humanity has faced extinction before and survived. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived our own worst impulses and our capacity for destruction. We will survive this. To the Korean Empire, I say this: you have made a terrible miscalculation. You see 300 ships and think we are weak. You see our divided history and think we will crumble. You do not understand what you are facing. Humanity does not surrender. We do not bow. And we do not forgive those who threaten our home. Around the world, people watched in their homes, in shelters, in the streets. Some cried. Some prayed. Some armed themselves. In military bases, soldiers checked their weapons and said goodbye to families. In research labs, scientists worked frantically on anything that might tip the scales. In homes, parents held their children and tried to explain why the stars had disappeared high above Earth. Supreme Commander Thelvin watched the broadcast with growing confusion. In his long military career, he had delivered this ultimatum to dozens of species. All had responded with either immediate surrender or desperate pleas for mercy. None had ever simply said no. He reviewed human historical records his intelligence officers had compiled. What he saw disturbed him. This species had spent its entire existence at war. With nature, with each other, with the very concept of limitation. They had split the atom and immediately turned it into a weapon. They had reached their own moon, not through cooperation, but through competition. Every major human achievement seemed to be connected to conflict. Thelvin called his war council. Prepare for full combat operations. But be ready for the unconventional. This species is not like the others. On Earth, the 72-hour countdown began. Humanity had 3 days to prepare for a war it could not win. But preparing to win and preparing to fight were two different things. And humanity had always been very, very good at fighting. The Korean analysts worked through the night, trying to understand humanity's refusal. In the war room of the flagship, holographic displays showed everything their sensors had collected about Earth. Population centers, military installations, industrial capacity, technological level. By every metric, humanity should have surrendered immediately. Supreme Commander Thelvan stood before the largest display, watching footage of human history. His intelligence team had compiled what they considered relevant data. He watched humans fighting each other with primitive weapons, then more advanced ones, then weapons that could destroy entire cities. The progression was rapid, violent, and relentless. They fight constantly, one analyst observed. Even their entertainment simulates combat. Their literature glorifies warfare. Their leaders are often chosen based on aggressive qualities. They're predators, another said. Most advanced species evolved from prey animals or cooperative herbivores. Humans evolved as hunters. It's in their basic nature. Thelvan watched footage of human soldiers in ancient times, holding a narrow mountain pass against overwhelming numbers. He watched them charge into machine gun fire on beaches. He watched them plant a flag on their own moon and claim it as a victory in a race against themselves. Something about this species unsettled him deeply. On Earth, Admiral Haiyan Wu had divided humanity's response into 3 categories: space operations, ground defense, and what he called creative solutions. He gathered his senior staff in a secure bunker deep beneath the ocean. Captain G1 presented the space warfare plan. We can't fight their fleet directly, so we won't. We'll scatter our ships across the solar system. Every vessel becomes an independent raider. We hit supply lines, communication relays, isolated ships. We never mass our forces. We never give them a clear target. They'll hunt us down eventually, someone pointed out. Probably, G1 agreed. But every hour we keep them busy is an hour they're not bombarding Earth. Every ship they assign to hunt, U.S. is one less bombarding our cities. We trade our lives for time. Colonel De Haiyan outlined ground defense. We evacuate the cities. Not all at once. That would cause panic and be impossible logistically. But we move critical personnel, children, elderly, to underground shelters and rural areas. The cities themselves become traps. He pulled up maps of major metropolitan areas. We rig buildings with explosives. We create underground networks. We stockpile weapons and supplies in hidden caches. When they land, and they will land, they'll find abandoned cities that become killing grounds. Urban warfare favors defenders, especially defenders who don't care about preserving infrastructure. We're talking about destroying our own cities. President Minna said softly. We're talking about making them worthless to occupy, Aion corrected. A city in ruins costs them resources to hold. An intact city becomes their forward base. We give them nothing they can use. Dr. Tae-Sung presented the most unusual proposals. We've been working on experimental weapons, but they're not ready. So we weaponize everything else. Commercial spacecraft become missiles. Orbital construction platforms become kinetic bombardment weapons. Communication satellites become jamming devices. Even space debris becomes a navigation hazard. He showed designs for what he called quantum mines. They create localized spatial distortions. They won't destroy their big ships, but they'll disable sensors and engines. They work once, at short range, and we have about 200 of them ready. Not enough to win, but enough to hurt them. Engineer Su Bin had spent 48 hours without sleep modifying civilian technology. She presented her work with dark circles under her eyes. We've retrofitted 300 civilian spacecraft. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, luxury yachts, anything that flies. They're not warships, but they can ram, they can carry explosives, and they don't look like military threats until it's too late. Suicide attacks. Someone whispered. Volunteer pilots, Subin corrected firmly. Every single one volunteered. We had to turn people away. Across Earth, ordinary citizens prepared in their own ways. But Aora, a teacher from Seoul, had transformed her school into a data warfare center. She led a team of students and volunteers in what she called aggressive information operations. We're flooding their communication networks, she explained to a group of new volunteers. Every frequency, every channel. We send them our history, our wars, our horror movies, our most violent music. We show them what happens to invaders. We show them Vietnam, Afghanistan, Stalingrad. We show them that humans don't just resist. We make resistance cost everything. Young Sik, a programmer who had been working on video game engines, now applied his skills to hacking. Their computer systems use quantum encryption, but encryption doesn't matter if you can corrupt the data before it's encrypted. We're inserting false sensor readings, fake fleet positions, corrupted orders. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down. The world had become a hive of desperate activity. Factories that made cars now made armor. Chemists who developed medicines now developed explosives. Athletes trained civilians in hand-to-hand combat. Everyone contributed something, because everyone understood what was at stake. With 24 hours left before the deadline, Captain G1 led a reconnaissance mission. She took her fastest ship and a volunteer crew deeper into the Kovian formation. They stayed silent, using passive sensors only, mapping the enemy fleet. What she found was both encouraging and terrifying. The Kovian ships were arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Beautiful, efficient, and tactically sound for conventional warfare. But there were gaps, blind spots where their sensors overlapped poorly. Their formation assumed they'd face an organized fleet, not scattered raiders. They're predictable, her tactical officer observed. Every ship maintains exact position. Their patrol patterns are clockwork. They're not adapting to face us because they don't think they need to. Arrogance, G1 said. We can use that. She transmitted the data back to Admiral Hyun Woo. Within hours, every human spacecraft commander had the information. They studied the gaps, the patterns, the weaknesses. It wasn't much, but it was something. Supreme Commander Thelvin issued a second broadcast with 12 hours remaining. He appeared on screens worldwide again, this time showing his flagship's main weapon charging. An abandoned space station, one humanity had decommissioned years ago, floated in view. This is your final warning, Thelvin said. Submit or face annihilation. The weapon fired. A beam of concentrated energy struck the space station, and it simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, converted to its component atoms. The demonstration of power was absolute. President Min watched from the command bunker. Around her, people grew quiet. The weapon was beyond anything humanity had developed. One shot could erase a city. The flagship alone could sterilize Earth's surface in hours. Impressive, Admiral Hyun Woo said quietly. But notice what he didn't do. He didn't fire on Earth. He didn't fire on our fleet. He destroyed an empty station. He's still trying to force surrender without fighting. Why? Min asked. Because fighting is expensive. Every shot costs energy. Every damaged ship costs repairs. Every occupied city costs personnel. They've conquered 47 worlds by making conquest look easy and resistance look pointless. Actually fighting a war is something they want to avoid. So we make them fight. We make them fight in ways they've never experienced. With 6 hours remaining, humanity sent its response. Not through official channels, but through every communication device on Earth. Billions of humans simply recorded messages. Some were defiant. Some were afraid. Some were angry. But they all said the same thing in thousands of languages and millions of voices. No, the messages flooded outward into space, overwhelming Covrian receivers with sheer volume. No complex strategy, no diplomatic negotiation. Just billions of voices refusing to submit. Thelvin watched the communications assault with growing unease. He had expected pleas for mercy or desperate bargaining. Instead, he got defiance from every human, from world leaders to children. One message particularly disturbed him. It came from an elderly human woman. "I survived 2 wars already," she said in a shaking voice. "Buried a husband and 2 sons. You think you scare me? Come down here, and we'll show you what a grandmother can do with a kitchen knife and determination." His war council gathered for final planning. "Recommendations?" Thelvin asked. "Full orbital bombardment," one officer said. "Destroy military capacity, then demand surrender again." "They won't surrender," Thelvin said. "We need to accept that. This species will fight until they're extinct. Then we make them extinct." Thelvin looked at the tactical displays. Deploy ground forces to major cities. Occupy and establish control. Minimize orbital bombardment. We want a planet we can use, not a radioactive wasteland. As the final hours ticked away, both sides made their last preparations. Humanity had no illusions about victory, but they had something else. They had spite, stubbornness, and a species-wide agreement that if they were going down, they'd take as many Covrians with them as possible. The deadline arrived. The war began, and the Covrian Empire learned what humanity meant by no. The first Covrian mistake happened in the opening minutes of the war. They expected humanity's fleet to mass together for a defensive stand near Earth. Instead, Admiral Hyan Wu's ships scattered in 300 different directions, disappearing into the vast darkness of the solar system. Supreme Commander Thelvin stared at his tactical display in confusion. Where did they go? Dispersed across multiple orbital paths, his sensor officer reported. Some heading toward Mars, others toward the asteroid belt, several diving toward the inner planets. No central formation, no battle line. They're just running in different directions. "They're fleeing," one officer suggested. "No," Thelvin said slowly. "They're repositioning. Find them. All of them." But finding 300 small ships in the vastness of space proved harder than destroying them in open battle. The Covrian fleet began breaking formation, sending hunter groups after individual human vessels. It was exactly what Hyan Wu wanted. Captain G1 led the first attack. Her ship, a modified frigate called the Defiant, had been hiding in the shadow of one of Mars's moons. She waited until a Covrian cruiser passed within range, separated from the main fleet by several thousand kilometers. Her crew was silent, hands steady on controls. "Target locked," her weapons officer whispered. "Fire everything," G1 ordered. The Defiant unleashed every weapon it had. Missiles, railgun rounds, laser arrays, and 2 of Dr. Taesong's experimental quantum mines. The Covrian cruiser's shields absorbed most of the damage, but the quantum mines did something unexpected. They didn't destroy the ship, but they created a spatial distortion that disabled its engines and sensors for precious seconds. "Ram them," G1 ordered. Her crew didn't hesitate. The Defiant accelerated at maximum thrust directly into the cruiser's side. The impact tore both ships apart. 300 human crew members died instantly. But so did 1,500 Covrians, and one of their cruisers was destroyed. Across the solar system, similar attacks happened simultaneously. Small human ships appearing from nowhere, attacking isolated Covrian vessels, then either escaping or dying in the attempt. The Covrians won every engagement, but each victory cost them time, resources, and ships. "They're insects," a Covrian captain complained. We destroy them and more appear. They're not fighting to win. They're fighting to be annoying. On Earth, the Kovrian ground invasion began. Massive troop carriers descended on major cities. New York, London, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, Cairo. The alien soldiers were prepared for resistance. They wore advanced armor, carried devastating weapons, and had tactical doctrine refined through dozens of successful occupations. Colonel Daehyun watched the landings from a command post hidden beneath Seoul. "Let them land," he ordered. "Everyone hold position." The Kovrian troops entered empty cities. Buildings stood silent and intact. Streets were deserted. No resistance appeared. It was eerie and wrong. In their experience, populations either fought immediately or surrendered. This absence of anyone felt like a trap because it was. A Kovrian platoon moved through downtown Manhattan, securing buildings one by one. Their squad leader reported back. No hostiles encountered. No civilians present. The city appears evacuated. "Move to the central government district," came the order. The platoon advanced 2 more blocks. Then engineer Subin, watching from a camera feed, pressed a button. The building to their left exploded, collapsing sideways into the street. The building to their right followed. In 3 seconds, the entire block became a tomb of concrete and steel. 40 Kovrian soldiers were crushed or buried. "Welcome to Earth," Subin whispered. Similar attacks happened in every occupied city. Buildings exploded when enemy troops moved beneath them. Bridges collapsed under the weight of alien vehicles. Underground tunnels flooded, drowning entire squads. The cities weren't abandoned. They were weapons. Colonel Daehyun's forces emerged from hiding and attacked in small groups. They used the rubble, the smoke, the chaos. They'd shoot from windows, then disappear into tunnels. They'd ambush patrols, kill a few soldiers, and vanish before reinforcements arrived. Urban warfare at its most vicious. The Kovrians had superior weapons and armor, but they didn't know the terrain. Every street corner could hide enemies. Every basement could contain a bomb. Every pile of rubble could be an ambush point. They were fighting ghosts who knew every inch of ground. In space, Young Seek's cyber warfare campaign bore fruit. Kovrian ships started reporting false sensor readings. Navigation systems showed incorrect positions. Communications became unreliable. The effect was subtle, but accumulated. Ships couldn't coordinate as effectively. Fleet movements became sluggish. BORA's information warfare was more psychological. Every Kovrian communication channel received constant bombardment of human war footage. Images of soldiers fighting in impossible conditions. Videos of civilians resisting occupation throughout history. Recordings of humans explaining, in excruciating detail, what they planned to do to any Kovrian who landed on Earth. "They're trying to demoralize us," a Kovrian communications officer said. "Is it working?" Thelvin asked. The officer hesitated. "Some soldiers are requesting reassignment. They've never faced an enemy that promises such sustained violence." Dr. Taesung's next innovation was transforming orbital infrastructure into weapons. The International Space Station, already evacuated, was fitted with thrusters and explosives. It was guided into a collision course with a Kovrian supply ship. The explosion destroyed both, but humanity had lost an empty station while the Kovrians lost supplies meant for 10,000 troops. Commercial satellites became improvised missiles. Construction platforms were dropped from orbit onto enemy positions. Even trash became ammunition. Humanity weaponized everything that could fall from space. Admiral Haiyan Wu coordinated the chaos from a command ship hiding in Saturn's rings. He couldn't communicate with all his scattered vessels directly because Kovrian jamming was too effective. Instead, he'd planned everything in advance. Each ship had orders, contingencies, and complete operational freedom. His captains were supposed to cause maximum disruption, however they saw fit, and they did. Some ships set up ambushes near supply routes. Others attacked communication relays. A few even approached the Kovrian home fleet and broadcast surrender signals, only to detonate themselves when enemy ships came to accept the surrender. It was treacherous, dishonorable, and brutally effective. They're not following any warfare conventions, a Kovrian admiral complained to Thelvan. They use false surrenders. They attack medical ships. They target communication and supply rather than military vessels. They're fighting without honor. They're fighting to survive, Thelvan corrected. And they're succeeding at making this far more costly than anticipated. The Kovrian casualty reports started coming in. In the first week, they'd lost 37 ships. Not destroyed, but damaged badly enough to require withdrawal for repairs. Ground forces had suffered 3,000 casualties. Not catastrophic numbers, but sustained at this rate. The occupation would bleed them continuously. Thelvan called his war council. Assessment? We're winning every engagement, one officer reported. But they're not massing for engagements. They're making this a war of attrition. At current casualty rates, full pacification of Earth would take 2 years and cost us approximately 15% of our fleet strength. Unacceptable, another officer said. No conquest has ever cost us more than 3% losses. Increase bombardment, someone suggested. Level their cities completely. Then we occupy rubble and gain nothing, Thelvan said. This planet has resources we want. Population we can use. Destroying it defeats the purpose. On Earth, President Minna received the daily reports. The numbers were grim. 30,000 human military casualties. Unknown civilian casualties. 5 major cities partially destroyed. Humanity's space fleet was down to about 200 operational vessels, but the Kovrians had also suffered. Their invasion had stalled. Their troops controlled some territory, but couldn't expand without facing ambushes. Their fleet was scattered across the solar system, hunting raiders that refused to be caught. We're losing, Colonel Dehayan said bluntly. But we're losing slowly, and they're paying for every meter. How long can we sustain this? Min asked. Months, maybe longer. Admiral Hyan-Wu said via secure communication. We have supplies cached, weapons stockpiled, and civilian population dispersed enough that they can't target us effectively. The question isn't how long we can fight. It's how long they're willing to. That night, Min broadcast another message. It wasn't aimed at Earth, but at the Kovrian fleet. She spoke directly to Supreme Commander Thelvan. You came here expecting an easy victory. You expected us to surrender like the other 47 worlds. But we are not like them. We are humanity. We've been fighting since we climbed down from the trees. We've been at war with nature, with each other, with the universe itself for our entire existence. She paused, letting the translation software work. You can kill us. You can destroy our cities. You can glass our planet. But you cannot make us stop fighting. Every soldier you send down becomes a target. Every ship you send becomes a casualty. Every day you stay here costs you more than you can afford. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. Not because we beat you militarily, but because conquering Earth will break your empire. We will make this so expensive, so bloody, so sustained that other worlds you've conquered will watch and wonder if they can do the same. We will become your nightmare example. She leaned forward, staring directly into the camera. Leave now while you can still call it a tactical withdrawal. Stay, and we'll make you understand why humanity has never been conquered. Because we simply refuse to lose. The message ended. In the Kovrian flagship, Supreme Commander Thelvan watched it 3 times. For the first time in his long military career, he felt doubt. 3 weeks into the war, Supreme Commander Thelvin faced a reality no Kovrian commander had experienced in 2 centuries. His forces were winning every battle, but losing the war. The mathematics were simple and brutal. At current casualty rates, fully conquering Earth would cost him 20% of his fleet and take 3 years. And that assumed humanity didn't adapt further or receive help from somewhere. The Kovrian Empire had invested enormous resources into this invasion. Ships, soldiers, equipment, supplies. All of it based on the assumption that Earth would surrender quickly like every other species had. Now those resources were being consumed at an alarming rate. And the Empire's other holdings were watching closely. "We have reports of unrest on 3 conquered worlds," his intelligence officer reported during the morning briefing. "They've seen the broadcasts from Earth. They're asking why humans fight when they didn't. Some are asking if resistance is possible." "Put it down immediately," Thelvin ordered. "Double the occupation forces if necessary." "That's the problem, sir. We'd need to withdraw forces from Earth to reinforce other worlds. And if we appear to be losing air," Thelvin understood the implication. The Kovrian Empire's power was built on perception as much as reality. They were invincible because everyone believed they were invincible. Earth was shattering that perception with every passing day. On Earth, the cost of resistance was devastating. Colonel Dai-Hyan had lost half his effective fighting force. Cities were in ruins. Civilian casualties, despite evacuation efforts, had climbed into the hundreds of thousands. Medical supplies were running low. Food distribution networks were collapsing. Humanity was being ground down slowly but surely, but they were still fighting Dot in the ruins of Berlin. A group of 20 soldiers held a section of the old metro tunnels. They'd ambushed 3 Kovrian patrols that day, killing 34 enemy soldiers at the cost of 7 of their own. Now they waited for the inevitable retaliation, weapons ready, preparing to sell their lives as expensively as possible. The Kovrian response came with overwhelming force. They'd learned that small probing attacks against human positions usually ended badly. Now they sent massive assault forces, using heavy weapons to level entire blocks before sending troops in. It worked, but it turned the cities into unusable wastelands and cost them ammunition and time. Captain G1 was down to 30 operational spacecraft. Her raiders had been hunted relentlessly, and the Kovrians had adapted to their tactics. They no longer isolated ships easily. They maintained tighter formations. They'd installed better sensors. Raiding was becoming nearly impossible. She gathered her remaining captains via encrypted communication. "We need something dramatic," she said. "Something that hits them hard enough to matter." "Their flagship," someone suggested. "We kill Thelvin, maybe the whole operation falls apart." "Suicide mission," another captain pointed out. "That ship is protected by 50 escorts. We'd never get close." "Then we don't go close," G1 said slowly. "We go from far away. Very far away." She explained her plan. It was insane and would cost most of their remaining ships. But it might work, and at this point, might work was the best option available. Dr. Taesum worked day and night on weapons that might turn the tide. His quantum disruptors had proven effective in limited engagements, but he needed something bigger. Something that could take out multiple Kovrian ships at once. His team was exhausted, operating on stimulants and determination. They'd lost several colleagues to Kovrian strikes on research facilities. "We're close," he told President Minya during a brief communication. "I think we can create a cascading quantum field. It would disable everything electronic in a spherical radius. Our ships, their ships, everything. But if we could time it right, use it when their fleet is grouped. How close is close?" Min asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. If we have 2 weeks. Mena didn't know if they had 2 days, much less 2 weeks. But she authorized additional resources for his work. Every option had to be explored. Young Seek's cyber warfare had become personal. He'd lost his sister in a Korean bombardment of Bizan. Now he worked with a cold fury, developing ever more sophisticated attacks on their systems. He couldn't crash their ship's computers. The security was too good. But he could corrupt data, introduce delays, cause confusion. Death by 1,000 small glitches. I want them to suffer, he told Biora during a brief break. I want every Korean soldier to doubt every readout on every screen. Biora understood. She'd lost people too. Everyone had. Her information warfare campaign had evolved from demoralizing the enemy to coordinating human resistance. She'd created encrypted communication networks, distributed intelligence, helped scattered resistance cells coordinate attacks. Her classroom full of computer equipment had become a nerve center for global resistance. Admiral Hyen Woo knew the end was coming. Not defeat necessarily, but the culmination. Either humanity would find a way to make the Koreans leave, or the aliens would escalate to full planetary bombardment. The middle ground of sustained occupation was becoming untenable for both sides. He made a decision. Every remaining military asset would be committed to one final major operation. Not to win, but to prove that humanity could still strike hard. He began coordinating with G1, with Daehyun, with every cell of resistance still fighting. The Korean Empire's ruling council, governing from their homeworld far away, demanded answers from Felvin. He stood before a holographic projection of the 5 council members, feeling the weight of their disapproval. This conquest should have been completed in days, the first counselor said. We have now lost 63 ships, 8,000 soldiers, and invested resources equivalent to conquering 5 normal worlds. Explain. Humanity is unusual, Felvin said carefully. They don't fight to win. They fight to make us lose. Their entire strategy is based on making conquest more expensive than we're willing to pay. Then pay it, another counselor snapped. Crush them utterly. If we destroy the planet completely, we gain nothing. If we continue the current campaign, we bleed resources. If we withdraw, we appear weak. The humans have trapped us in a situation where all options are bad. The council was silent for a moment. Finally, the first counselor spoke. You have 2 weeks to show significant progress. Increase pressure. Break their will. If you cannot do this, we will send a replacement, and you will face consequences for this failure. The communication ended. Felden stared at the empty space where the holograms had been. He'd never failed before. He'd conquered worlds that resisted, species that fought bravely. But none had been like this. None had been so willing to destroy themselves, just to hurt him. He called in his most aggressive commander. I'm authorizing increased bombardment. Target their supply lines, their hidden bases, everything. No more restraint. We break them in 2 weeks, or we all face disgrace. On Earth, the bombardment intensified. Orbital strikes hit suspected resistance hideouts. Entire regions were declared free fire zones. The Koreans stopped trying to occupy and started trying to exterminate. Cities that were ruins became ash. Forests hiding resistance cells were burned to the ground. President Min received the reports with a heavy heart. How many dead today? Estimated 40,000, an aide said quietly. Could be more. Communications are breaking down. Can we hold for 2 more weeks? Can we hold for 2 more days is the question, Colonel Daehyun said. He appeared on screen, his uniform torn and bloody. Behind him, fires burned. They've stopped playing nice. They're going for complete destruction now. Then we make our last stand count, Mena said. Tell everyone still fighting. If we're going to die, we die taking as many of them with us as possible. Captain G1 launched her plan that night. She'd positioned her 30 remaining ships in a loose formation far beyond Pluto's orbit. They'd been there for days, silent and dark, appearing as nothing more than space debris on Kovrian sensors. Now they began their approach, not toward Earth, but toward the outer edges of the Kovrian fleet. They accelerated to maximum velocity, burning all their fuel. They weren't coming back from this. Each ship became a kinetic weapon, a missile moving at significant fractions of light speed. The Kovrians detected them too late. 30 ships struck 30 targets across the enemy fleet's outer perimeter. The explosions were spectacular. At those velocities, even small spacecraft carried enormous energy. Kovrian ships were destroyed or crippled. G1's last transmission before impact was simple. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who said we couldn't win. We're taking you with us. The attack shattered the Kovrian fleet's outer defense line. It didn't win the war, but it proved that humanity could still strike hard. More importantly, every conquered species in the Kovrian Empire watched the battle recordings and saw that resistance was possible. Thelvin received casualty, reports, and felt something he'd never experienced before. Not fear of death, but fear of failure. Fear that this backward species had found a way to defeat the invincible empire. The morning after Captain G1's final attack, Supreme Commander Thelvin stood in his command center and faced an uncomfortable truth. He was losing. Not militarily, the mathematics still favored the Kovrian Empire. But strategically, politically, and economically, Earth was defeating him. His intelligence officers had compiled the data. Reports from across the Empire showed increasing unrest. 3 conquered worlds had experienced riots. 2 others had attacked Kovrian garrison forces. The footage from Earth, showing humans fighting against impossible odds, had spread throughout the galaxy. Other species were starting to ask dangerous questions. If humans can resist, why couldn't we? That single question threatened the foundation of the Kovrian Empire. For 200 years, their power had been maintained through the perception of invincibility. Now humanity had shattered that perception, and the cracks were spreading. We could still win this militarily, one of his officers said during the morning briefing. Full bombardment, sterilize the surface, claim victory. Can rule over a dead world? Thelvin asked. And explain to the Empire why we destroyed valuable resources? And deal with the rebellions that would spark on every conquered world when they see we'd rather destroy than negotiate. He pulled up casualty figures. Over 4 months of fighting, the Kovrians had lost 91 ships, over 12,000 soldiers, and consumed resources equivalent to conquering 15 normal worlds. Earth's military was shattered. Their cities were ruins, but the surviving humans were still fighting with the same determination they'd shown on day 1. They're not stopping, Thelvin said quietly. We can kill them all, but they won't surrender. And the longer we stay, the more damage we take, and more other species think resistance is possible. On Earth, Admiral Haiyan Wu operated from a mobile command post that moved daily to avoid detection. His fleet was gone. His command structure was fractured. But scattered cells of resistance still fought across the planet and throughout the solar system. They'd evolved beyond organized military operations into something more primal. Survival and spite in equal measure. Colonel De Haiyan commanded. Approximately 8,000 soldiers from the ruins of Seoul. They controlled a network of tunnels beneath the city and launched raids every night. The Kovrians had bombed the surface repeatedly, but the underground networks remained largely intact. His troops were exhausted, hungry, and running low on ammunition. But they were still fighting. How long can we hold? One of his officers asked. As long as necessary, De Haiyan replied. Until they leave, or we're dead. Those are the only two options. Dr. Taesung had completed his cascading quantum field weapon. It was massive, requiring most of their remaining power infrastructure to operate. It would work once, disable every electronic system in a huge radius, and then burn itself out. He'd positioned it in a hidden facility in the Amazon, aimed at orbital space above. We use it, and everything stops working, he explained to President Min. Our systems, their systems, everything. But if we time it right, when a large portion of their fleet is in range, we could cripple dozens of ships simultaneously. And then what? Min asked. Then they either escalate to complete destruction, or they realize this planet will never be worth the cost. Young Seek had accomplished something remarkable. He'd managed to infiltrate the Kovian communication network deeply enough to access their internal reports. What he found was encouraging. The Empire was fracturing. Resources were being diverted from Earth to deal with uprisings elsewhere. The invasion was becoming politically toxic for the Kovian leadership. He shared this information with Ba Ora, who immediately began broadcasting it to every human resistance cell. They're hurting. Not just here, but empire-wide. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting to bring down their whole system. President Minna, operating from a bunker that changed location every 6 hours, made a decision. She authorized Dr. Taesung to prepare his weapon. She ordered every remaining military asset to prepare for one final coordinated strike. And she drafted a message to Supreme Commander Thelvin. But before she could send it, something unexpected happened. A single Kovian shuttle approached Earth without weapons, broadcasting peace signals on all frequencies. It requested permission to land and deliver a message from Thelvin himself. After 4 months of brutal warfare, the sudden peace overture was shocking. Admiral Haiyan Wu authorized the landing at a secure location. The shuttle descended to a plateau in what used to be Nevada. A Kovian diplomat emerged, flanked by 2 guards. They were met by a contingent of armed human soldiers, who looked more like guerrilla fighters than formal military. A diplomat spoke through translation software. Supreme Commander Thelvin wishes to negotiate a ceasefire and discuss terms. Surrender terms? Colonel De Hyan asked. He'd traveled to meet the delegation personally. No, the diplomat said carefully. Discussion terms. Both sides have suffered greatly. Perhaps there is a path that doesn't end in mutual destruction. The message was relayed to President Min Ah. She consulted with her advisors. The debate was intense. Some argued it was a trick. Others said negotiation from a position of weakness was surrender. But Min saw something else. An opportunity. If they wanted to destroy us completely, they would have done it already, she said. They're here because conquering Earth is costing them too much. We negotiate. But we negotiate as equals who've earned their respect through blood. The first meeting took place on a neutral space station that had survived the war. President Min Ah represented Earth. Supreme Commander Thelvin represented the Kovian Empire. They sat across from each other, 2 leaders who had sent thousands to their deaths. Your species is impressive, Thelvin began. I have conquered 47 worlds. None fought like you did. We're not impressed by your conquests, Minna replied coldly. You attacked our home. You killed our people. Don't expect gratitude for finally deciding genocide was too expensive. Thelvin's crystalline features shifted in what might have been respect. I understand your anger, but I propose we look forward. The Kovian Empire cannot conquer Earth without destroying it. You cannot defeat our fleet without dying in the process. Perhaps there is a third option, which is peace, real peace. Earth retains complete sovereignty. We withdraw all forces. In exchange, you don't actively seek revenge or spread your resistance tactics to our other holdings. Min, I laughed bitterly. You want us to leave your empire alone? After you tried to enslave us? I want to avoid a war that would cost both our civilizations everything. Your resistance has inspired unrest across our empire. If I continue this war, I face rebellion on multiple fronts. If you win, you unleash chaos that could destabilize the entire galactic region. So, you're asking us to help you maintain your empire of slaves. I'm asking you to accept that immediate revolution across 47 worlds would result in millions of deaths and decades of chaos. I'm offering Earth freedom and access to galactic technology. In return, you don't actively destabilize what you cannot rebuild. The negotiations lasted 3 days. The terms were hammered out in painful detail. Earth would retain full sovereignty and gain access to Kovrian technology and trade networks. The Empire would withdraw completely and provide reparations for reconstruction. In return, humanity would not provide military aid to independence movements in Kovrian territory, though they were free to offer diplomatic and humanitarian support. This isn't justice, Admiral Hyan-Woo said when Minna presented the terms to Earth's leaders. No, she agreed, but it's survival, and it's victory. We made them leave. We preserved our freedom. Justice can wait until we're strong enough to enforce it. The final vote was close, but the treaty was ratified. The Kovrian Empire began its withdrawal. 12,000 warships that had once surrounded Earth in a display of power now left in scattered groups. Many damaged, all demoralized. They left behind a planet in ruins, but a species unbowed. Engineer Su Bin worked on adapting Kovrian technology for human use. Their energy systems alone would revolutionize Earth's infrastructure. Their medical technology could save millions. Their faster-than-light drives would open the galaxy to human exploration. We lost so much, she said quietly to Dr. Tae-soon as they examined alien equipment. But we survived, he replied. And now we have tools to make sure no one can threaten us again. Colonel Dae-Hyan oversaw the reconstruction of Seoul. The city was in ruins, but people were already returning. They cleared rubble, rebuilt homes, and started over. That was what humans did. They rebuilt. They adapted. They continued. 6 months after the withdrawal, Young Seek detected multiple alien signals approaching Earth's solar system. For a moment, panic spread. Were the Kovrians returning? But Biora's team quickly analyzed the transmissions. They weren't invasion fleets. They were delegations from other species, some from Kovrian territory, some from independent worlds. President Min-ah received the first delegation personally. They were representatives from a species the Kovrians had conquered 40 years ago. Their leader spoke through a translator. We watched your war. We saw you refuse to surrender. We want to learn how to fight like you did. More delegations arrived over the following weeks. Some wanted military training. Others wanted diplomatic advice on negotiating with the Kovrians. All of them looked at humanity with a mixture of awe and hope. Earth had become famous across the galaxy, not for any great achievement or ancient wisdom, but for one simple act. They had said no to an empire and made it stick. Admiral Hyan-Woo retired from active service and began writing a comprehensive analysis of the war. Future generations would need to understand what had happened, how humanity had survived, and what it cost. The casualty figures were staggering. Over 3 million dead. 40% of Earth's major cities destroyed or heavily damaged. The space fleet completely rebuilt from scratch, but they had survived. And more than survived, they had proven something important. Humanity's place in the galaxy wasn't as subjects or victims. They were players, participants, equals. 1 year after the invasion, Earth dedicated a memorial to all who had died in the war. President Min-ah spoke at the ceremony, her words broadcast to the entire planet and beyond. We paid a terrible price for our freedom. Millions died. Our world was scarred. But we made a choice that defined us as a species. When faced with the choice between servitude and extinction, we chose a third option. We chose defiance. We chose to fight. And we taught the galaxy that humanity will never kneel. She paused, looking at the crowd of survivors, soldiers, civilians, all who had contributed to victory in their own ways. The Kovian Empire thought we were primitive. They thought our small fleet and scattered resistance could never free us.